8 state capitals evacuated after bomb threats. There's big news yesterday. Law enforcement in multiple states reported the threat was sent via email to government employees. And today, we have this reporting coming from NBC News. For the second consecutive day, similar bomb threats were seen at numerous government buildings in many states. We recently were at Turning Point USA. I was on stage with Tucker Carlson, Luke Rutkowski, Ian Crossland, Seamus Coughlin, and Charlie Kirk, and then eventually James O'Keefe. We were talking about the federal government targeting innocent people with false charges and false arrest. And Tucker Carlson said, at what point does someone just say no? At what point does someone just say no? It's a scary thought. It really is. Because we don't want false charges. We don't want corrupt government. We want to, we oppose all of that. But Tucker's correct. At a certain point, someone's going to snap. And what we're seeing here may be the beginning of this. Now, it's kind of crazy to believe it was 2022. We got swatted 15 times that year. The next year, everything seemed to chill out. We think we know why. Here at Timcast, we think we know exactly what happened. But federal law enforcement doesn't care. Marjorie Taylor Greene got swatted several times, I believe. Just recently, in the past few days, Laura Loomer was swatted. Jack Posobiec's parents were swatted. I believe Marjorie Taylor Greene's family was also swatted again. And now we're getting these threats. Mississippi and Arkansas. Seems like the work of far leftists. As for these other states, you have Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Georgia. No idea. I don't know who's doing it or why they're doing it. Hawaii even as well. I can only tell you that people are starting to lose it. And 2024, boy, has it begun. It starts off with a murder, with an alleged terror attack in Rochester. It starts off with the Epstein documents being released and people being named as child rapists. Starts off with conflict. And I hope it stops. But I think that would be naive. Whenever I talk about the potential for conflict, crisis, civil war, etc., I say maybe I'm wrong about everything, and it'll all just calm down and everyone will say, wow, that was crazy. We got out of hand. I say that because there's a possibility I'm wrong about everything. And I know that a year or two from now, people may look back and be like, nothing happened. Tim was wrong. Absolutely. Absolutely, I could be wrong. And so I say it every time, look, man, I don't know. I'm just looking at this stuff and I'm like, now we got 2 consecutive days of bomb threats at public buildings that already prompted numerous evacuations. Right. Where's the off-ramp? Tell me why you think this calms down. Honest question. Because I don't see it. I really don't. Joe Biden put out a campaign ad. I covered this, a couple hours ago on this channel. He called half of the American voters extremists that must be stopped. It was stark because, normally political campaign ads are like, John Smith is wrong on healthcare and wrong for America. Now, the campaign ad is, these are dangerous extremists who must be stopped. Wow. It's very, very crazy, isn't it? Yesterday, at least 8 state capitals were being evacuated following bomb threats. Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, Montana, Maine, Minnesota, Michigan, Hawaii were all subjected to threats that were ultimately cleared by law enforcement. The threats are now being investigated by the Department of Homeland Security. The wave of fake threats comes after multiple swatting calls to the homes of several high-profile public figures, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, Brandon Williams, Rick Scott, George Soros. And don't forget, Laura Loomer's in there too. Jack Posobiec's family as well. And when we were getting news that these swattings were happening, I got to be honest, I think we probably got swatted, considering it had happened so much, but nobody was here. So, I'm not going to say that it did. I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if someone made a phone call about us. The cops are like, ain't nobody there. Because we keep in contact with law enforcement, security, etc. That's what, look, I'll be honest too. We were swatted 15 times in 2022. We were probably swatted in 23 as well, but we've got a strong security apparatus at this point. We're really aware of what's going on. And so anytime these things I don't want to give away too much of our security protocol, but when stuff like this happens, we have a protocol for it, which basically diffuses it instantly. And I also want to stress, swatting doesn't mean a SWAT team kicks your door in with guns ablazing. Everybody seems to think that. No, it means someone made a phone call, making a false accusation, police were dispatched. After a certain point, the cops are like, we get it, we're not going to kick your door in or anything like that. But law enforcement still does show up. They do. We also have a strong security apparatus. Law enforcement swept the Hawaii Capitol with special operations explosive detection canine units for 3 hours and found no evidence. There's 76 elected officials here in the building and all their staff and all their support staff. The research staff, so lots of people, hundreds of people in the building, said State Rep Diamond Garcia. No explosives were found in Mississippi, and the same is true for all the others. The latest news now from NBC. Government buildings across the South received bomb threats on Thursday, the second consecutive day that such warnings prompted serious security measures at government facilities. In Mississippi, multiple bomb threats at various locations across the state prompted officials to take precautionary measures and put in place standard emergency procedures. The agency said that bomb teams had been deployed to locations throughout the state. A spokesperson for the department didn't immediately respond to questions about what buildings received the threats. In Arkansas, the Pulaski County Courthouse in Little Rock was also forced to evacuate after a bomb threat was received. The spokesperson for the Arkansas State Capitol Police said. This is a tweet from MSDPS. Multiple threats have been received across the state. Precautionary measures are being taken. And in Florida, local media reports indicated that similar threats prompted the evacuation of a state courthouse in Daytona Beach. The fresh wave of threats comes one day after at least 8 state capitol complexes, including the ones in Mississippi and Arkansas, were forced to evacuate following bomb threats. Federal officials have warned that public servants at all levels of government have faced a huge surge in threats in recent years. In September, Attorney General Merrick Garland testified that government workers had seen an astounding number of such threats. In addition, several government officials have faced in just the last month an uptick in swattings. When someone makes a false report of a crime, we know this. Marjorie Taylor Greene said she was the victim of a swatting incident at her home in Georgia on Christmas Day, while Senator Rick Scott of Florida said his home was in Naples was swatted a few days later. Maine Secretary of State Shannon Bellows was the target of a swatting call on December 30th after ruling that former President Trump was constitutionally ineligible to appear on the state's primary ballot next year. Civil war. I'm done. I'm done with it. Okay? Maybe it doesn't happen. I hope not. But come on, man. We're already in civil strife. Stephen Marsh wrote the book about it. I bring him up all the time. I got his book right here, The Last Election. Let me pull this book up. Shout out to Andrew Ng and Stephen Marsh. Apparently, there's a character in this book based off of me, although I'm willing to bet they don't do my character justice because they're extremely biased individuals. And but shout out for him willing to come on the show. I think it's funny. It says it's a work of fiction. All names, characters, places, and incidents, and the product of the author's imaginations. Any resemblance to real events or persons living or dead is entirely coincidental. They literally told me there's a character in the book based on me. Stephen Marsh wrote the book, The Next Civil War. Stephen Marsh's worldview is predicated upon lies from the corporate press. I mean that with no disrespect. He's just wrong. We disagree on things. That's fine. But he believes things that aren't true. We've had this discussion. However, academically, the United States is in civil strife. This means that every year a certain amount of people are being killed due to political issues happening in this country. We are now into 2024. Do you really think the election will be resolved? What a wild thing to say. I don't see any scenario in which there is a vote that is held and it's respected. We've already got, as they mentioned, Maine removing Trump from the ballot. That is sedition. That is an act of war. Listen. In 1860, the election of Abraham Lincoln, the Democrats did not remove Donald Trump. Ballots weren't issued. Donald Trump didn't remove Abraham Lincoln. See, Civil War talk. It's all blending together. It's all bleeding together. The Democrats didn't remove Abraham Lincoln. The Republican Party didn't issue a ballot in these states because they knew they wouldn't win them. But there was also a fear among any of the individuals in these states who were sympathetic to the GOP that if you were seen carrying a Republican ballot, you would be beaten, ostracized, or shunned. That's why. Today, partisan actors unilaterally remove a candidate from the ballot. In Maine, it happened. Unilaterally. telling the people of Maine, you are not allowed. Now, Trump won an electoral vote from Maine. I think Maine was split. I mean, that's taking. You know, we're not talking about a blue state. We're not talking about California or Colorado. We're talking about a state where Trump actually stands to win, stripping him of the ability to earn those votes. It's an act of civil war. I'm sorry. Michael Mouse is going to lose this bet with Roseanne. Now, he can argue all day and night that if you vote, an election happened. But that's just, at a certain point, I'm like, no, sorry, man. Now, it's up to him whether he wants to pay out or not. But listen, people will vote probably. But then what's going to happen is Maine's going to issue their electoral votes. And then Republicans in Congress are going to say, you unilaterally removed Trump. These votes don't count. We're not going to count them. You didn't have an election. The front runner was not on your ballot. People couldn't vote for him. And they're going to argue it's their state and their right to do so. Several red states will then file a lawsuit to the Supreme Court arguing that states do not have a right to determine qualifications for president. Only the Constitution and the federal government has that right. And the Supreme Court will have to determine whether or not Donald Trump is eligible. And the Supreme Court will say he is. Uh-oh. When that happens, these states that removed Trump, they're going to say, well, we don't have, I'm sorry, the election's over. So it'll go to a contingent election. A contingent election means House delegations each cast one ballot. And then whoever gets the most wins. And right now, that's the Republican Party. And that means Donald Trump wins. And the Democrats are going to say Donald Trump lost. Then his cronies in the Supreme Court propped him up. And it's exactly what we said was going to happen in 2020. And they did it. Maybe some states secede. I don't know. But we're looking at this escalation of violence. You tell me where the off-ramp is. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.